there's a word that can divide or unite people, right? Some consider it offensive, some consider it a way of life. But I think of it as a disease for which there is no cure. The first time I realized I had this disease was pretty late in my life, considering you can identify it at birth. In the 3rd grade, I got into a bit of an argument after a kickball game at recess with another kid. Now, I knew I was right, and he did too, I'm pretty sure. But he actually won the argument with one statement. He looked me in the eye and he said, "Well, Tiamike, at least I'm not black." Now, I knew what that meant. I didn't know why he said that. In elementary school, we studied the U.S. Civil War over and over, right? When you're talking about the American Civil War, you're talking about slaves. I went to a basically white school with a minority of Latinos. In fact, my sister and I were the only black students that stayed at the school for more than a couple of years. So it's pretty easy to imagine that when slaves came up in class, some students liked to turn around and look at me. One time, my teacher said jokingly to the whole class, "Hey guys, if it weren't for Abraham Lincoln's actions, maybe Tiamike wouldn't be alive today." There was an awkward silence in the room, and when I looked down to avoid all the looks I knew I was getting, I knew that my teacher just learned something she can't say about a single black student in a room full of children when we just finished talking about the whipping of black slaves. Anyway, I wasn't confused by what the kid meant when he called me black. I knew I was black. You know, I had a mirror. My mom's half of the family's black. It was pretty obvious. But I didn't know until then that black was still an insult. And a few years later, I realized that the meaning of this unmentionable word may be changing. I was in my room back home in Arizona playing with Legos as quietly as I could because I was up past my bedtime and didn't want to get caught up late. When all of a sudden, my mom started screaming her head off out of nowhere. At first, I was pretty terrified, but then it started to sound more like a cheater than anything. So I went to investigate, right? And when I got to my parents' room, I looked inside and the door was open. And between her cheers, she saw me. She ran over to me, hugged me, picked me up, spun me around a bit. And when she put me down, I looked up and I saw the TV, right? I saw the news. And I read the headline. It said, "Barack Obama, elected 44th President of the United States." And it finally clicked what my mom was so excited about. There are tissues in this, right? On the TV, there was a whole bunch of confetti and the smiling Obama. And on my right was my mom smiling even more than the new president. Through her, I could see the surge in spirit of all black people that night. Right? Anyway, my disease is mental and physical, right? You can see my disease on my skin. But oftentimes it comes up in my own head shouting, "Hey man, listen, I know you're having this issue that has nothing to do with your race, but it probably does have something to do with your race." It's a black thought process and mentality coming on top of average issues that makes life as a black person difficult. For example, I was telling my girlfriend over and over about how excited I was for Declamations. And on the exact day I finally decided my topic, I went to my dorm to tell her over Skype. When I got on the call, you know what she said to me? She said, "Tiamike, I think we need to go our separate ways." Huh? I didn't know what to say. Keep in mind that a few weeks before that day, her mom said to her that we couldn't be together because I was black. Now, I know for a fact that my race wasn't why we had to split. But ever since that day, I've heard a voice, my voice, saying, "Hey man, come on. You and I both know very well that if you weren't black, you'd still be dating that girl right now. Shut up!" I'd have to repeat to myself, "Shut up!" I felt so ashamed of my skin. My dad asked me about the girl later, and I couldn't even tell my very, very supportive father that we weren't together anymore. Because if he asked me why, what happened, my first response would be, "Because, Dad, what business does a black guy have dating an Arab girl, apparently?" my disease is going to be at the forefront of my mind, whether it belongs there or not. In elementary school, there was another girl I liked, and I could never reach out and flirtatiously touch her arm or anything, because before my hand would get there, I would see her white skin and my darker hand, and I would pull back. Not because I was shy, but because I felt deep inside me that I had no business flirting with a white girl. In my dorm, there are quite a few people who say a certain word around me, to each other, and recently oftentimes to me. They think they can say it because nobody stops them. I always bite my tongue when I hear the word because it's easier for me to tell myself and them that it's just a word than it is for me to step in. And if I do step in, I can end up taking it too far, and people end up saying even more just to mess with me. That's happened in my dorm before. Sorry, not sorry to say the word, but nigga is a slur. Nigga is offensive. Most of all, nigga is my disease. So why can black people say that? Well, first recognize I am black. You can say light-skinned if you want, but that's all a variation of the same disease. Some close friends of mine have told me to my face that I'm not black, or I'm mostly white, because I don't fit the stereotype they have. I can't finish it.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Where was that? All right, I got it. Okay. When someone has a disease that makes them more likely to get shot, I'd appreciate it if you don't question it, right? I know what I am. Black people can say the word, although perhaps nobody should, because it's now a symbolic part of our identity, right? White people shouldn't say it because they kind of historically forced it onto us, and it's just racist coming from them. Nobody else should say it because they're not in the equation to begin with, right? Don't say it if you're not infected. Hell, I don't even like to say it. Not because I'm not black, or because some people say that nobody should say it, but because it's such an ugly, vulgar word. You can't understand how disgusting it is until you've heard it used against you. I've questioned my identity before, because I've always had both my parents there to tell me that they love me. And apparently that's a blessing that a real black American doesn't have. I know that I'm black, because when people see my skin and my hair, they see my disease. And so can I. The first time I realized I was black was in that argument in the 3rd grade. And since then, I've never forgotten it. Thank you.